Hello, my name is Benjamin Fulford, and I'm here to talk to you about the secret government of the United States and why it is the world's largest problem. My involvement with the secret government started this spring when I interviewed Japanese Finance Minister Heizo Takenaka, or former Finance Minister Heizo Takenaka.
Dragon's Den.
I confronted him with evidence that he had sold out the Japanese financial system to a group of financial companies controlled by David Rockefeller and the Rothschilds. The very next day, I got an email from someone who said he was introduced by Mr. Takenaka and he wanted to meet somebody. The person I met gave me this Freemason badge, and he said to me that he was a professional assassin and that I could either stop exposing people, he said I could either continue exposing people and die at the age of 46, or I could become basically Finance Minister of Japan. Now I have all this proof on tape and video. This is apparently what happens to a lot of people on this planet. They get to a certain level and they're told either you join us or you die. And most of them join them, and that way they get the elite in their pocket. And that's the secret of their control. In my case, I would have probably had to do that too. Although, once I realized I had met an honest, genuine, high-level Freemason who told me there were 13 levels of Freemason above the 33rd degree, and that these people were God. There was no God, they were God. So I asked them about their plans to kill people, and they said, yes, there are too many people on the planet. We need to get rid of several billion. And war doesn't seem to work, so we're going to use disease and starvation. Now, I don't know about you, but I couldn't live with something like that. And my first thought was I'll have to pretend to join them and try to, throw them over from the inside. And I suspect a lot of the people inside those groups have the same feeling. They hate being there, but they're scared. But they'd love it if these guys were overthrown. So you got to remember, not everybody in the secret government is evil. In fact, I'd be willing to bet a majority actually want to do good things for the planet, but they're scared. In my case, the very next day after I got this threat and offer of a bribe from the ninja, well, the guy who described himself as a ninja, a Chinese secret society contacted me. It's actually an Asian secret society. It's not Chinese. It's Japanese, Korean, Vietnamese. It's all of Asia. And they offered me protection. And this is their booklet. One of them. This is the booklet of the other. Now, people who know will know this is real. They have 6 million members. More, actually. Including 1.8 million gangsters and a lot of very intellectual people. They can mobilize all public opinion in Asia. So, with their protection, I continued exposing David Rockefeller. And earlier this year, I issued an ultimatum on Rense.com. The answer to the ultimatum was that the self-described assassin told me there would be an earthquake in Niigata Prefecture, Japan. And 2 days later, there were, on 2 consecutive days, earthquakes right on top of Japan's largest nuclear power plant. And I'll try to present this to people in the future. There was video taken of a ball of plasma in the atmosphere above Niigata on that day. So his answer was to hit a nuclear power plant with an earthquake machine and kill innocent people. Now I say, why on earth would I not then retaliate? Well, that would be playing into his strong hand now, wouldn't it? He controls a lot of violence, a lot of instruments of death. The people who are behind him, these Sabbatean sect of Satanists, would love to trigger World War III. And I'm not going to give them that excuse. So instead, the Chinese societies and the Asian countries, you may have noticed, have started dumping dollars, big time. And they've stopped going to G8 meetings in Davos. And you'll also notice that their submarines, Chinese submarines, have popped up right behind U.S. aircraft carriers in the middle of military exercises. What that means is that every single U.S. aircraft carrier is a useless sitting duck. The entire U.S. Navy is useless, okay? That's a fact. Secondly, all their satellites are useless, okay? And that's just the beginning. The screws will get tighter and tighter. The United States economy depends on Asian money. They need to borrow $850 billion a year just to keep going. And the Asians are tired of paying for a country that does nothing but attack people and create excuses for war. A lot of people are wondering why a picture of me smiling beside David Rockefeller appeared on the internet. And they're saying, how did I get to meet him? Well, he was here in Japan on what was supposed to be a top secret visit. However, if he's in Japan, he's on my turf. And it was pretty naive of him to think I wouldn't know he was here and I wouldn't know where he was. Now, I could have had him brought to me all tied up with a vibrator up his ass, just like happened to that reporter for the Yomiuri newspaper in April when you got too close to these people. But I don't think torture is a very polite way of talking to people, and nor is it very productive. Friendly conversation is always the best. Now, the interview may be a little bit disappointing in the sense that a guy like that is not going to go and just tell you, oh yes, I'm head of the secret government and I sacrifice children and I'm planning, to turn everybody into sheep. It's just not going to happen. You have to look for subtle signals. It's the rules of the game. I was a corporate journalist for 20 years. And I know that if you just ask those questions, they'll shut down the interview, you get nowhere. So if I said, why did you spread HIV and why did you create SARS? He would say to his bodyguard, get this Fruit Loop out of the room. That's how it works. So I had to operate within his matrix. And I hate going there. I hate that place. But I had to pretend I was a friendly journalist. And I had to sneak in the stuff I wanted to ask because, unfortunately, it would have been great if you could really hit him with this stuff, but it wasn't that circumstance. He was accompanied by the president or chairman of a fancy PR company and a guy who looked like heavy-duty Mossad type who could probably kill me in 3 seconds if it ever came to that. I came with a cameraman and myself. And now, you may wonder, when you look at this interview, why I was not more aggressive. The reason is simple. Years of experience have taught me that you get nowhere with an aggressive interview. I would only get lies, and here's evasions and spiel, and the interview would be cut short. What I've learned over the years is that you got to appear like their friend when you interview them, or you're not going to get good information. So I'm now going to show you the segments of this interview, and then I'm going to deconstruct them for you, so that you can know what I think this man is really saying. Years is that you got to appear like their friend when you interview them, or you're not going to get good information. So I'm now going to show you the segments of this interview, and then I'm going to deconstruct them for you, so that you can know what I think this man is really saying. meet you.
See you.
Here we go.
So Ben, want to get into the world situation and so on, and I would think, you know, when he talks about the state of the world and the possibility of conflict and so on, I think you've dismissed these things, you know, in terms of whether there's going to be another war and all of that.
Yes, that dismissed it.
You know, dismissed in the sense
Yes.
that,
Okay.
and if he asks you if you're running the world, I think you dismissed that as well.
Sure, yeah.
I think we can dismiss that before we start.
Okay. Well, all right. So let me start though. I know that I've read quotes from you before, and I believe also from your memoirs, where you have said that you would like to see the formation of a world government. What sort of vision do you have for, you know, humanity to stop war and get its act together? So.
Well, I'm afraid I have to start with what you recall. I don't recall that I have said, and I don't think I really feel, that we need a world government. We need governments of the world that work together and collaborate, but I can't imagine that there would be any likelihood or even that it would be desirable to have a single government elected by the people of the world. So I think whatever you heard was misrepresented my feelings.
Okay. So the first question is, he says, I don't want a government of the world elected by the people of the world. Okay, that's the key little sort of wiggle thing there. He likes a secret government of the world, is my guess, not one actually elected by the people of the world. Okay? This is the key to understanding this. And he's denying the quote that everybody's heard of him that comes from his own memoirs. So that's his official face. I don't want a world government, but only if it's elected by the people. There's a quote if you go to Wikipedia and Google under David Rockefeller saying that. Now,
what I've told you is my feeling.
Well, you're the man. Now, the other thing is, people are worried about the situation with Iran and some kind of wider conflict emerging from that. What do you think is going to happen there? What's your view about the tensions between Iran and the United States right now?
Well, I think the first thing is that Iran itself is a problem, but its relationship with its neighbors, probably from the point of view of the United States, is the thing that we would be most concerned about, because there are such different points of view in the area, and the possibilities of conflict between the nations within the area is certainly what is of concern to our country.
Okay. Now, here in Asia, people say that the current structure of world institutions is not fair. They say that European peoples account for 17% of the world population and 40% of GDP, but they control 4 out of the 5 permanent Security Council seats. Asians are 65% of the world population and 40% of GDP, so they think some sort of better representation is needed. What is your view about this?
I think it's an issue that understandably and legitimately is raised by the nations with a smaller percentage. When the United Nations was created back right after World War II, the world situation was a totally different one, and the influence of different powers was very different. Therefore, I think that it is understandable that those nations with large populations that feel they're underrepresented have a point, and that this should be addressed. I don't think it's something that, to me, is immediately a serious problem, but I do think that it's something that should be taken up in the United Nations, and that over time some redistribution of voting power within the United Nations structure seems likely and probably appropriate.
Now, he's saying Iran is causing trouble with its neighbors, and I'm not aware of any such evidence, okay? It sounds to me like he's just trying to find an excuse to attack Iran. Now, on the United Nations thing, well, basically saying, you know, someday, but not now. And his whole attitude is like it's really his decision, and it's not, okay? The Asians are tired of waiting. They're not going to wait another forever. Time has run out. This is what the Asian Secret Society is telling me, is that enough is enough. We live on the same planet. We both get rights to decide how it's run. They're tired of European domination of the planet. They want to share stewardship of the planet Earth. And the Asians want peace. They're tired of Westerners causing wars. They want world peace. That's what they want. And they want a more fair world structure. And I don't see any reason why that cannot be done immediately. Now, also, it's sort of difficult for me to ask this, but these days conspiracy theories are running rampant on the internet. And I thought you could, metaphorically speaking, take the bull by the horns and, let me ask you what, confront you with what, or ask you what these people are saying. Now, also, it's sort of difficult for me to ask this, but these days conspiracy theories are running rampant on the internet, and I thought you could, metaphorically speaking, take the bull by the horns and, let me ask you what, confront you with what, or ask you what these people are saying. First of all, they say that you are the secret ruler of the world. What is your response to that?
Well, in the first place, you're not the first person who has raised this issue. There have been people, ever since I've had any kind of position in the world, who have accused me of being a ruler of the world. I have to say, I think for the large part, I would have to decide to describe them as crackpots. I mean, it makes no sense whatsoever, and isn't true and won't be true. And to raise it as a serious issue seems to me to be irresponsible.
Now, you see, that's what happens when you ask a question directly like that, okay? That's the sort of answer you're going to get. Are you the secret ruler of the world? You say, well, no, okay? So, later you'll see why you have to take a more indirect route to get the same response in a different way. So, for now, if you ask the man directly, he's going to deny everything. That's why you have to get a little bit more sneaky, as we shall see. And what about the candidate Ron Paul, who's talking about bringing the powers of the Federal Reserve back to the U.S. government, under the presidential control or control of Congress?
I haven't read about that. Is that an issue?
Well, he's one of the Republican.
He's a Republican candidate, and that's what he's publicly calling for. So,
I would not look upon that as one of the great issues that needs to be addressed at this time.
When you ask about Ron Paul, you got to look at his face and see, the look, right? It's like, what? And it's like, is this true? Like, why haven't you two dealt with this? But it's clear that he's so far removed from what's happening that he doesn't even know that Ron Paul exists or is out to take the Fed back. That's how far above the clouds this man thinks he is, or is insulated by his coterie. The source of his power is under threat, and they don't even tell him. And anyway, it's the look on his face that tells you the true story. What do you think the great issues are?
Running our own country better and having our own country play a more balanced and effective role in the world.
Okay. And what's wrong now with the way it's running, the U.S. government? I mean,
you mean wrong with our country, or?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I think one of the things that is needed is the fact that I don't think enough people in high positions in our country accept the importance of our world role with sufficient gravity. I mean, in other words, I think the tendency, because of politics and getting elected, is to stress local issues, and of course they are important, but I would like to see more of the leaders of our country spend more time in traveling, for one thing, getting to know the world, and studying history. To me, one of the sad things about our country is that our leadership, to a greater extent than I would like, is more concerned about very domestic issues than they are about our relations in the world.
In this particular case, I have to agree. There's a joke going around in the world. What do you call somebody who speaks 3 languages? Trilingual. What do you call someone who speaks 2 languages? Bilingual. And what do you call someone who speaks 1 language? American. You guys are going to be left behind if you don't sort of take a look at the world. Okay, the world is passing you by. You're going to become irrelevant unless you keep up. You're going to lose to people who speak 2 or 3 languages and know 2 or 3 cultures. That's a warning. He's right on the mark, that one, at that time, I'm afraid to say. You guys are not the center of the world anymore. And the sooner you figure that out, the better it is for everybody. Okay. Now, what about the plunging dollar and the rising euro, and the apparently Asian countries have been unloading their U.S. Treasury holdings? Are you worried about the economic situation now?
Well, I think that that has to be related to the problems within our own country, and in the one's reading about in the papers today, that there's grave concern about what our role should be, how it should be handled, and how we should better manage our own domestic economy. And I think this is becoming a serious issue that is going to have to be addressed by any politicians who wish to be re-elected, that they have to see that the issue of our economy and what influences it is better understood and more successfully addressed.
He looked quite worried when he talked about the collapsing dollar, and there's a good reason for that. The face value of all the dollars in the world is 10 times greater than the value of the U.S. economy. The Asian countries are saying, we're not going to use your dollars anymore if you keep going around killing people. And we're not going to support an army that's just attacking us. So this is your weak spot. This is your Achilles heel. And it's being attacked by the Asians. And that's no coincidence. Now, you'll be meeting the Emperor, is that correct?
I'm looking forward to that.
What will you be talking about?
That will certainly, to a large extent, be his decision. My impression is that emperors tend to lead conversations. I have had the good fortune and privilege of meeting him a number of times before. I would hope we would have a chance to talk a little bit about his views of the world and how he feels our country is relating to Japan. But also, our family has had quite close relations with Japan for many years and with the royal family. So my suspicion and even hope is that we might also talk about those relationships in the past and where they might go in the future.
Japanese newspapers have talked about this weekend about an imminent fundamental change in U.S.-Japan security relations. Have you heard anything about this?
I don't think so, really. And it's not an issue that I would think the emperor would want to discuss with me. I mean, I can't imagine that would be one of the things we talked about. I don't think it would be appropriate.
Right. And your nephew, Jay, he studied in Japan, didn't he?
He spent 3 years here.
And do you have good relations with him? Some Japanese people are telling me that you've had some sort of fight, but again, I don't know.
No idea what they're talking about. We have very close, loving family relations. I don't know what...
All right. Well, again, this is just what people have told me. I don't know, that's why I'm trying to confirm it now.
I don't think they knew what they were talking about.
Now, which issue do you think is more important now, the war on terror or global warming?
There are two major issues, both of which have to be addressed. They're very separate, and I think the way we deal with
which issue do you think is more important now, the war on terror or global warming?
There are two major issues, both of which have to be addressed. They're very separate, and I think the way we deal with them there have to be different steps taken. They're just fairly separate issues, but both important, major importance.
Now, here is where the indirect method gets you much better results, okay? Now, why, you might ask yourself, does his family have close relations with the imperial family of Japan? What reason could there be for that? The emperor doesn't go around meeting anybody. In fact, he hardly meets anybody except very, very senior government officials. So he's basically there revealing that he is arriving as a secret representative of the secret government of the United States to talk with the secret government of Japan. So here you have it. This is where he's admitting what he's denying earlier. That's the only explanation I can think of. Emperors don't go around meeting retired bankers. And they don't go summoning them, especially during a crisis in U.S.-Japan security relations. Now, do they? It doesn't make sense, except if you think of him as a secret ruler of the United States, and you think of the emperor as a secret ruler of Japan. That's the only reason why it makes sense for them to meet at this time. So everything you read in the newspapers about U.S.-Japan relations eventually is a result, I guess, of this secret meeting. So he was summoned because something has changed. The Japanese government is no longer following orders. And that's also because of the Asian Secret Society. So, these guys are no joke. Okay. Now, if you had to say one message to the world, what would it be?
I think that the best hope for peace and prosperity in the world is greater cooperation among nations, which in turn will be produced if both our governments and the people of our countries travel more and get to know each other better.
When I saw Rockefeller's photograph in the paper, I had a very, very bizarre experience. I've never experienced something like this before, but it appeared somehow like my great-grandfather, G.T. Foldsworth, was channeling to me. I know this, what? Well, he was saying, you better tell David he's not got long to live, and he's got a chance here to change his ways. And it is the best approach. If you can get this man to change his mind, so many other things will change. But if you think I'm crazy, and maybe I am, but the William Lyon Mackenzie King, a man who was Prime Minister of Canada for 21 years, that's the longest Prime Minister in the Commonwealth, and longer than any U.S. President, okay? He regularly consulted with the ghost of my great-grandfather. And for some reason, 70 years after the fact, to this day, the contents of what that ghost told him have not been made public. They're not available on the transcripts of his diary that are on the web. Everything that the ghost supposedly told him has been deleted. So, something's weird there. But maybe we'll dismiss all that talk anyway, because it doesn't matter. The point is, and this is the point I want to make, is that the Sabbatean atheists, Satanists, who are trying to artificially create the apocalypse, who are trying to recreate their old Babylonian empire, have been exposed. Their game is up. It's over. They're not going to accomplish it. They're not going to start World War III. They're lucky if they're going to stay alive. So I'm telling you, you members of the Council on Foreign Relations and Bilderberg and all those families, the Harrimans, the Schiffs, the Bushes, the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, the Walkers, etc. You are just a bunch of old-fashioned aristocrats, and you've got armed peasants at your doorstep. You are in grave danger, extremely grave danger, and I'm offering you a chance to actually make your biblical prophecies come true. It's easy, and it's not crazy. It's scientifically provable. All they got to do is stop war. Devote all the money that's used towards war to ending poverty, saving the environment, saving the planet. And here's the clincher, it is now technically possible to give people lifespans of hundreds of years and eventually eternal life on this earth. And that's hard science, not fantasy. And it's also possible saving the planet. And here's the clincher, it is now technically possible to give people lifespans of hundreds of years and eventually eternal life on this earth. And that's hard science, not fantasy. And it's also possible to make people radically more intelligent, okay? Don't you see eternal life and superpowers available on this earth? Now, if that doesn't qualify for something that could be called end of times, I don't know what is. And if these people want to build a new ziggurat or temple, well, go for it. Just do it somewhere where you got clear property rights. You know, there's nothing in the Bible that says it has to be in exactly the same place. So you can carry out your damn prophecies and save the planet and give people eternal life, or you can be killed. Think about it. This is real. This is not some crazy guy. Do the hard research. Look at the science. Look at the facts. This is true. Now, the people in the U.S. Army, I tell you this, if those, members of your elite slave-ruling class, who you just become dimly aware of recently, do not take this suggestion, I strongly recommend that the Provost Marshal arrest them. And if you dismantle their so-called charitable funds and their trust funds, which is just a disguised form of landed aristocracy, you'll find that there'll be more than $100,000 for every man, woman, and child in America. There's a lot of families that could use that kind of money. Now, of course, if they go and all spend it right away, it'll become worthless. But if they spend it carefully, their futures will be much better. So, if these ruling families do not listen and change their hearts, arrest them. And I know that's happening. I know their day is finished. And to you in the military, I say this. Why are you murdering innocent women and children? You realize that you're going to be seen by history as the same as the Nazi generals who did not stand up to Hitler, and that you will face war crimes, trials, unless you do the right thing, which the American people want, and your army is useless, okay? Think about it. The Chinese submarines are popping up behind your aircraft carriers. That means they're sitting ducks. Your entire fleet of aircraft carriers is useless junk now. Your satellites are all going to be blown out of the sky. Your dollar is going to be trashed. And, most important of all, is you don't have any enemies anyway. Nobody wants to fight you. Nobody wants war. The planet is tired of war. You don't need to invent new wars just to keep yourselves employed. Go terraform Mars. Go save hungry kids in Africa. Go fix up ecosystems. There's a lot of better things to do with your organization than kill innocent Iraqis. And you know it. Your people know it. You want to go back to Kennedy's America. And that's something that you should do. It's a decent thing. It's the right thing. Just follow your common sense. We have now the scientific ability to give people permanent life on this earth. Superpowers. We can end poverty, stop environmental destruction. You want to do that, or do you want to keep on with endless war? And to you conspiracy people, I have a word to say to you guys too, okay? It's easy to criticize someone for spilling a glass of milk. It's much harder to put the milk back in the glass. So, it's fine to criticize, and it's great, but you've got to spend a little bit more energy and time coming up with alternatives. If you want to really get the power, you have to come up with a better plan, not just criticize the plan that's going on now. However, basically I salute you, and I'll let you know that the people of the world are on your side, and the horrible, nasty American government you have now is about to fall. Its days are finished. And humanity is about to wake up from a long and terrible nightmare. We're going to see the most wonderful things. Dawn is coming. But you American people need to shake off that horrendous leadership that has sneakily inserted itself above you over the past 100 years. Remember that. They killed Kennedy, they killed Martin Luther King, and they're trying to kill you. But if you do have to fight them, do not fight hired guards who have families to support. That's a waste of time and you'll lose. Concentrate on assassinating those top people. Do not waste your time with hired thugs. But hopefully, and most wisely of all, is peaceful protest. Soft power is the strongest of all. That's the essence of Oriental wisdom. Anyway, these guys are finished. That much is for sure. You will be free soon. Thank you.